Everybody remembers Yugimuto, Yu-Gi-Oh's premier protagonist, world's spikiest halfling. His mother showed up like once in his life, setting him up on his path to becoming a Pokemon master. But something else that Yu-Gi-Oh is well known for was the sheer diversity of the deck that he played, which would only ever have been possible with the infinite consistency that the anime allows, and with the diversity that Yugi had, it would have made Chaz the Chad Thunder very jealous. Consisting of such cards as Dark Magician, Magna Warriors, Gadgets, Chimeras, Gaia, Karibo, the Egyptian Gods, Poker Knights, Horus, Legendary Knights, Silent Swordsmen, Silent Magicians, Magician Girls, and the topic of today's video, the Summonedskull. We start off, of course, with the original Summonedskull, which is a level 6 Dark Fiend monster with 2500 attack and 1200 defense, whose flavor text simply states that he is a fiend with dark powers for confusing the enemy, and amongst fiends, he boasts considerable force. Also, he is treated as an Archfiend card. Now, that is a very important thing. We'll get to it later, but let's just talk briefly about Summonedskull in of himself as just a monster he be. For the time period this guy came out, it's actually a pretty nice monster. Single tribute 2500 beat stick back in the early 2000s. Not too shabby. It's actually easier to summon out than the Dark Magician, which I find hilarious that Yuri didn't use this thing more often. The Summonedskull is a really cool dude. He's called the Lightning Fiend in the original. He's the Lightning Fiend. He's a giant skull demon man shooting lightning out of his hands. That's pretty intimidating monster. Of course, anything nice I can say about Summonedskull and normally really applies to any normal monster. The new Primite cards are really, really good in conjunction with this dude. He's a nice allure target, being a dark monster. There's things like Celestial Observatory for draw power as well. There's a lot of things you can just do with Summonedskull in of himself. You could run him in a Monarch engine if you want to. You could, I don't know, you could bake a cake with him. You could bake a cake with him if you really wanted to. But the most important thing that ever happened to Summonedskull in terms of supporting him was that retroactive turning him into an Archfiend card. This opened up the potential for Summonedskull to be combined with all the other amazing Archfiend cards that we got. No, Wild Spawn, I wasn't talking about you. But yes, anyway. So Summonedskull does work with the other Archfiend cards, and there are a couple we'll mention that are, really good in a Summonedskull deck. But something else to keep in mind is that as an Archfiend, and combining things with like Vision Resonator, you can use Summonedskull to be powering out an absolute power force of a time with some Red Dragon Archfiends as a spicy synchro tech. Something I really think is really cool about Summonedskull. Just really, really cements that you can take old school cards and make pretty much anything you want out of them. Now, as for ratios and just like general builds of Summonedskull, I would say you want to play at least 3, 2. Maybe you could get away with 2, but you never want to play just the one Summonedskull. Of course not, because if you're just playing one Summonedskull in a deck, is it really a Summonedskull deck? If you make Dogmatica, Tearlament, Marincest, Chronomalies and put in one copy Summonedskull, does that make it a Summonedskull deck? I don't think it does. So yeah, I would run at least 3, possibly 2 if you really want to stretch it thin, but I'd say 3 is good. There's enough ways of getting this guy out of the board and making use of him in the hand that putting him in 3 is not a bad idea. Next up from the original support lineup of Summonedskull, we do look at the spell card Maku the Magical Mist, which is a normal spell that lets you target Summonedskull or any thunder monster in your monster zone to destroy all monsters the opponent controls with defense less than or equal to the attack of that monster. And damn it, they had to mention the monster zone. What if they put my Thunderous Fiend in the spell trap zone with Flamberg's Dragon? What am I going to do then? But yes, this also restricts you to having no battle phase until you activate the card, which really makes this a very much worse version of Raigeki. Now, admittedly, this was made back at the time when Raigeki was banned, but at the same time, are you really going to use this card to get rid of your opponent's monsters when you have things like Lightning Vortex instead? It's a very silly card. I mean, it's beautiful artwork. I think it's very intimidating and very cool looking, but the restriction of no battle phase in an archetype that's all about beat sticking, not really a good idea. And unfortunately, that's where Summonedskulls were for quite a long time. Very strange. As the game progressed, many of Yugi's deck monsters got the archetypal treatment, got support. Magnet Warriors, Gadgets, Karibos, the Magician Girls. all those different things got lots of love and support, and we're not even going to bring up the DM. No, we're not going to talk about that point. But the Summon Skull didn't get a lot of love directly. Rather, Konami opted to give a lot of referential monsters to this guy, as in monsters that look like Summon Skull, but they do not have anything to do with Summon Skull. Things like the Red Eyes Archfiend of Lightning, this Archfiend's Advent, the Skull Archfiend of Lightning. Again, these are guys that look like Summon Skull, but they ain't Summon Skull. And they have like nothing to do with Summon Skull other than having the same stat line. However, one thing I will briefly mention is Archfiend's Commander, which is one of the Archfiends that is very good in a Summon Skull deck. Same stats as the original Summon Skull. And if you control an Archfiend card, you can summon this card from the hand. You can't attack with the Archfiend Commander, but that's not important because he pops one of your monsters upon summon. And if this guy does get Tribute Summoned, you can revive a level 6 Archfiend from the graveyard. Really nice effects. The first one's really good in conjunction with things like Archfiend's Heiress and Cavalry, allowing you to search out more Summon Skulls or recover them. And if this guy gets Tribute Summoned, you just revive out a Summon Skull for some spicy Xyz plays. So, very nice card to be running in a Summon Skull deck, and I like that he's indirect support, but he works well with Summon Skull. It's very nice. Now, before we get into the actual support line that Konami did eventually get to with our Summon Skull, very important to mention the spell here, the Piercing the Dark spell, which is a continuous spell that allows that once per turn, you normal special summon a non-token normie, you draw a card. In any sort of Synchro, Xyz, Fusion, or Ritual monster summoned using a normie, can gain attack equal to its attack target once per turn, or if it's attack too. It's either way, but it allows those monsters to beat over bigger monsters, and you get to draw cards whenever you summon Skull. Really good card with Summon Skull. It's just beautiful card. It allows you to keep on drawing, especially when you get into seeing what Summon Skull's actually got as his support run, and it allows those monsters that we're going into to beat over any problematic things. The first major piece of Summon Skull support that we ever got was Archfiend's Awakening, which has the same stats as the original Summon Skull. I'm not going to keep reading on that because they're all the same. But this is a ritual monster which can be ritual summoned with Contract of the Abyss. It becomes Summon Skull on the field, but it's still treated as an Archfiend. Can't be destroyed by battle except by a ritual monster. It can't be destroyed by card or monster effects except by ritual monster effects. And if ritual summoned and sent to the grid by the opponent, you can summon Skull from the hand deck or the graveyard. Really nice start up to this support line. Archfiend's Awakening is a solid defensive monster to be stalling out your opponent, stopping them from just blowing it up with things like Fire Kings or Red Eyes Dragoon. Red Eyes Dragoon doesn't know what to do with this thing. He just doesn't know what to do with the darn thing. And even if Awakening does get destroyed or what have you, he's going to float into a Summon Skull, which, again, if you have Pierce the Dark on the board, you're all good. Now, a couple of little issues with Archfiend's Awakening. Number one, Konami, for whatever reason, decided not to give this guy a ritual spell. I get Contract of the Abyss was already a ready-made card and all that good stuff. But the problem is that you can't use pre-prep of rights in order to make this guy a little bit more consistent. It would have been really nice if that was the case. If getting a nice ritual spell would have been great. But it's just a bit of an oversight, I feel like. This guy could have used a ritual spell to make him a little bit more easy to get out. And another thing to mention is that defense. While it is really cool that he's immune to being destroyed by stuff, he's not immune to, being flipped face down or spun into the hand or, banished straight away. Things like that. In fact, the old First of the Dragons fusion monster is basically Archfiend's Awakening, but with a better defense, because he's just straight up immune to monster effects and can't be beaten by monsters that have effect variety. So, while Awakening is a nice little dude, it's just not as potent as I would have liked it to be for a modern-ish sort of card, but it's perfectly reasonable to play this card in your Summon Skull deck. In fact, that's one of the more popular things to do with Summon Skull, is to summon out this dude. Now, as for ratios to how many you want to play in your deck, really depends on if you're making this guy the focal point of your deck or not. If you are, you play 3. If you're not, play 2. I think 2 is plenty. Next up, we have the fusion monster of the Summon Skulls, which is Archfiend's Manifestation, which is a fusion monster needing Summon Skull and any dark monster. Becomes Summon Skull on the field, but it's treated as an Archfiend. All Summon Skulls gain 500 attack, and if fusion summoned and sent to the grave by the opponent, Summon Skull from hand deck or graveyard. Wow, this is kind of underwhelming, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, that nice 500 boost will let you beat over something. It'll help you beat over Sengenjin for sure. But Archfiend's Manifestation just kind of feels underwhelming, considering that there's no archetypal fusion spell. Summon Skulls didn't get a fusion spell. It's a little weird, but you know, the one good thing I will say about Archfiend's Manifestation is that because he has that generic summoning requirement, this is a very nice card to have super poly for. You know, granted, you need to make sure your opponent's playing darks, or you turn their opponent's monsters into dark. Layer of Darkness combo, possibly. But you want to be using super poly to get this guy out, fusing off your opponent's big strong monsters into this dude. I just wish that his attack boost was a little bigger, you know? Maybe if it was 600, half of his defense, it's better than 500. This would have allowed Archfiend's Awakening to beat over, like, bigger things. You'd think a monster called Manifestation could manifest a better effect, but hey, he looks cool. He's got that big old honking armed cannon or whatever he's got going on there. But as for a monster in this archetype, I would say Manifestation's good as a super poly target, and that's pretty much all he's good for. The stat boost really doesn't matter that much. Next up, we have Archfiend's Call, which is the synchro version of Summoned Skull. He got that big old ring that reminds me of the Magician Circle. I don't like saying Magician Circle referenced on an Archfiend card. But anyway, this is our synchro. And this effect is pretty simple. Again, you treat as Summoned Skull on the field, treat as an Archfiend card. Your opponent can't target Summoned Skull, you control the card effects, and if sent to the graveyard, you summon Summoned Skull for the hand deck of the grave. A lot of these monsters have the exact same sort of effects. Kind of, you know, it's nice that the monsters have that continuity, that they're able to all say the same thing and they all do the same thing. But the variety is kind of lacking. Now, Archfiend's Call does give you some nice protection against imperms and things, I suppose. Not to say these are bad defense, but the big issue with Archfiend's Call is because he's so closely aligned with Summoned Skull, he has the same stats as Summoned Skull, meaning you can't use Summoned Skull as the synchro material for this dude, unless you put in like some effort to reduce Summoned Skull's level. More often than not, using level 3 monsters in order to make this dude, I would recommend like the Cyclic Wheel. They're a really nice combo to go into this thing. But Archfiend's Call on his own, he's okay. I mean, he does protect the Summoned Skulls. It does require a lot to get like multiple of those guys on the board at once to make this thing really stand out. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just really hard to do. But Archfiend's Call, I think he needs to call Konami and tell him that he needed a little bit more protection on this dude. This should have protected from targeting effects and, I don't know, destruction effects. It should have been the whole package. Now, the last piece of the TCG members of the Summoned Skulls is the Archfiend's Ascent RXC's member. This guy, again, he's counted as Summoned Skull. If Summoned Skulls would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you deactivate material from this guy instead. And if this guy would be sent to the graveyard, then, you know, you get Summoned Skull. Again, a lot of same effects. In a sense, he is meant to be your protection. I feel like this guy's effect should have been rolled into Call, maybe giving Ascent some other sort of effect. I don't know, something. I'm not sure off the top of my head what wow, just bringing back more Summoned Skulls, maybe making all of them stronger. I don't know. It would have been, maybe this guy could have been the monster that I would just swarm out all of these synchros and fusions and rituals and normies and things. That would have been a nice effect for Archfiend's Ascent. You know? I think so. It would have been nice. Considering there's a lot of other nice rank 6 dark monsters you can make in this deck, Dragulus just immediately comes to mind as just like a one-off example. So it feels like you're not going to go into this guy very often. You know, it's nice to have that protection from being field nuked. There's nothing wrong with that, but the amount of effort you need to put in, yeah, Archfiend's Commander is really going to be putting in the effort to summon this dude out. Not wrong with that, but that takes up your normal summon. It's just with the amount of actual support that Summoned Skull has, and the lack of, you know, general swarm capability, reviving their monsters, etc., etc., it's going to be really hard to field this guy alongside Call, Manifestation, Awakening, all the same. Like, that's what Konami seems to have wanted to be the case, but they didn't give Summoned Skull the ability to do any of these things. I feel like the Ascent could have been great if it just had like a better swarm ability or something, but as it stands, it's just a rank 6 in an archetype that's all about level and rank 6s, so it's It's a thing. It's basically what it is. It's a thing. Now, normally this would be where the video ends, because that's all that Summoned Skulls ever got. However, while researching this video, I actually discovered something rather interesting that I didn't even know about, and that is that Summoned Skull has a support line in Rush Duels. That's right, Rush Duels of all things got a bigger, better, more consistent support line for the Summoned Skull. Now, I'm not a major Rush Duel player, so I'm not gonna go too heavy on what these cards are or what they're gonna be doing in the deck, but we'll go over them really, really quickly. You have things like Class Change Mirror, which can summon a Summoned Skull from the graveyard. You have Skull Archfiend of Armageddon, who counts a Summoned Skull in the hand and can ditch a card from the hand to become Summoned Skull and revive a level 7 or lower normal monster from the graveyard. You have things like Majinrai, the Striking Storm, which allows you to burn your opponent for 1300 damage. Masenko, the Lashing Light, which destroys all attack monsters level 8 or lower your opponent's field, but your effect monsters can't attack that turn. You have Meteor Flare Fusion. They have their own archetypal fusion spell, which is pretty nice. You have Archfiend's Revival, which is a trap that lets you bring back Summoned Skull if it happens to get destroyed. We have Miraime, the Igniting Inferno, which allows you to, while you have Summoned Skull and your opponent summons a level 6 or higher monster, you take damage with the number of monsters in your opponent's graveyard times 100, and then you shuffle all those monsters into your opponent's deck. Remember, Rush Duels, you kind of want to do that. It's kind of a thing. And lastly, of course, you have the Black Dragon Skull Archfiend, which honestly reminds me of like the Green Dragon Sword alternate transformation mode. You know, if you compare this thing to the original Black Skull Dragon, which allows you to ditch a card from the top of your deck to make all of your monsters gain 500 attack till the end of the turn, and destroys all face-up monsters with 3100 or less attack on your opponent's field. Wow, it's amazing that Konami put so much effort into Rush Duel Summoned Skulls. We got swarming capability, we've got varied effects, we've got destruction, we've got burning, we've got recovery. So much effort went into the Rush Duel cards that the TCG just did not do. You know, this lineup is more about like offensive action. This guy, the manga, he was described as one of the top 5 fiends of his time. He's the lightning fiend. He's all about offense. Konami, what did you do with the TCG? The monsters, they're all about like defense. They're all about defending the territory. Why? Why? The Rush Duel is all about offense. Why is the TCG all about the defense? I don't understand. Is it just because Yugi lost Summoned Skull in a couple duels in a row? He got stolen by Joey, stolen by Pegasus, and then Yugi stopped using Summoned Skull? I don't understand. Oh, Summoned Skull, just what did they do to you, man? One of Yu-Gi-Oh's early iconic monsters reduced to a barely playable mess of inconsistent cards. And I don't get why. You go from this powerful fiend with lightning blasts to an archetype that is more about all defense, no offense. I don't understand what Konami was thinking with this one. Forget the lacking of support. The Summoned Skull feels like they feel like they're part of a totally separate archetype. It feels like Summoned Skull is on its own, and all these new guys are just like posers pretending to own up to his name. Konami really dropped the ball. They really dropped the ball on this one. You know, spiders have more consistency with their effects than Summoned Skull did. That's the ridiculous thing. So, while I do love Summoned Skull, and I love building decks around it, you know, you combine this thing with the Resonators, and you combine it with Archfiends, you can make a very casual but very much more consistent deck around that. But you're focusing so much less on what Summoned Skull was given. It feels like Konami shouldn't have even made support for him. You know, they didn't do a very great job. I mean, the swarming after death thing to revive Summoned Skull is like the only passable thing you can do, and that's only because Pierce the Dark was a thing. If that spell didn't exist, lord, it would have been even 10 times worse. That card is the only thing keeping Summoned Skulls afloat. Thank you everybody for tuning into my little miniature rant on Summoned Skull. If you did enjoy, don't forget the like button, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and you know, let me know what you think about Summoned Skull. Do you think Konami dropped the ball? Have you ever tried their Rush Duel variant of Summoned Skulls to see how it goes? Because I'm very curious. And as for next episode, I am looking forward to doing Venoms in the Christmas season. If they do happen to get like a support line before the video goes up, I'll be doing a miniature live reaction to any Venom support that happens to be, just so I don't have to, like, you know, make a whole 20 extra minute, you know, just in case that Konami decides to make that support like right in the middle of me editing the next episode, so I don't have to add like a half hour's more recording and editing to, you know, make it all work out.